Hello and welcome to the Fin to the Woods podcast with me, Finian Hackett. I hope you're all doing very well and having a lovely day whenever or wherever you are listening to this. I've had quite an exciting week, I can't lie, and I'm very excited to tell you all about it. I teased last week that I had something exciting happening on the Saturday that's just gone, Saturday the 21st I believe it was, and I didn't want to tell anyone because I didn't want to jinx it and I didn't want it not to happen, but it did happen. I was in the live studio audience for Strictly Come Dancing, and I'm going to tell you every single detail. And then the following day I went to see Starlight Express, which again I'm going to give you a full in-depth review of. So buckle up because we've got all of that plus all the theatre news as well, so it's going to be a good one. Right, let's talk about Strictly. So Strictly Come Dancing is one of my favourite programmes on television. I've watched it for many, many years, and it's just kind of been a staple in my life for as long as I can remember. I've watched so many series of it, and that's how I know so many random celebrities, because they were often on Strictly at some point. And it's quite handy, I have to say, because I look quite clever, but it's just because I watched them dance for a couple of weeks on the telly. But my whole family have always enjoyed Strictly. Me and my nan used to text each other a lot. She loved Strictly Come Dancing. And me and my sister used to watch it. And me and my mum, we all do. We've all kind of watched it over the years. I have all the annuals, all the Strictly annuals from about 2000 and... I think I have the first ever one onwards. I think I have every single one. I never really read them, but they're quite a nice thing to have. So yes, I am quite a Strictly obsessive. And if you are listening in the US, Strictly was the basis for Dancing with the Stars and the huge global brand that is. But Strictly was the first, I believe. I think I've applied every year ever since I was eligible to do so for the ticket ballot. So they have this online ballot that they open for a couple of weeks where you enter your details, say what dates you'd like to go or like to possibly go and see Strictly and be in the studio audience, including Blackpool, and then you wait. And I think it's 2 or 3 weeks before the date that you would go, they email you telling you whether you have got the tickets or you haven't got the tickets. So I've tried for years and it's never gone well. I've never got anything. And I just apply to all of them because I'm like, well, if something comes up, I'll just skip whatever I'm doing and go and see Strictly because it's Strictly. But this year I made my dad apply and I made my sister apply and my friend Amy, she also applies every year and she applied as well. And I also applied. So we had quite a few more chances, but still, it's highly unlikely. The audience isn't very big and thousands of people apply every single year. And bearing in mind, they also do the ballot for kind of the Children in Need specials, the Christmas special, the pre-recording of all the dances, which is done a couple of weeks before the launch show, which is also on a ballot. So there's quite a lot of chances, but I like to just go for the live show ones. So as always, you wait around and you kind of forget about it really. And then one day my dad got an email saying that he won the ballot. This is his first time entering and he won for the first live show. And I was just like, you have to take me. You can't take any other member of my family or anyone. You have to take me. You just have to take me. And luckily, he did. So after many years of trying myself, I get my dad to enter once and he wins. So I could technically still win the ballot later on this series. I doubt I will, but technically I still could. So I assume once you've won it once, they take you off, but who knows? So we headed up to Elstree and Boreham Wood, which is where the studio is, Elstree Studios, and the George Lucas stage, which is where Strictly is filmed. There isn't much going on in Elstree and in Boreham Wood. It's quite dead. There's not many decent restaurants. It's kind of just one long high street and a TV studio. There's not much to do there. Although, while we were up there, EastEnders is filmed up there, another one of my favourite soap operas. I love it. And it's filmed in Elstree, over the road from where Strictly is. So we wandered round where it's filmed, and you can kind of see from the entrance to where EastEnders is where some of the buildings were, which was quite weird to see that in real life after watching again that for many years on television. And you could also see the viaduct as well from the old EastEnders set that they're currently kind of remodelling and adding bits to, which is exciting. And the big Holby City building is also in Elstree, so you saw that as well. Obviously not really in use anymore, but that's there. So that was a bit weird seeing all of those in person, and the weird that they're all in the same little kind of London suburb town. But yeah, Boreham Wood's there's not much to do there, to be honest. But you are there for the experience of going to see Strictly. So on the Saturday, on the day of recording, you go and queue from about 10 past 4, 20 past 4, and the last time you can kind of get in is 20 to 6 because they open the doors at 6 o'clock. So we joined the queue outside. Luckily the weather was okay. I imagine when it's raining it's bloody awful, but it was nice and sunny, quite warm, and we were joining the queue at about 4:30, but we didn't get in for another hour. It took quite a while for the queue to go down. There was quite a lot of people to get in because you have one queue which is the normal peasant people like us, and then also the family and friends queue, but you have to go through the same security point, so it takes a while to get through, but it was fine. And as I said, the weather was okay, so we didn't have to worry too much about getting wet or anything before that. So you queue for a while. The staff were very lovely the whole time throughout every element of the show, so big praise to all of them. There was such a nice atmosphere. And once you've gone through security, so you get your phone taken away as soon as you go into that first bit of security. You get your phone put in a little bag. You get given a kind of a raffle ticket, basically, and then you have to collect it after the recording is done. This is just to prevent anyone kind of leaking any results or filming anything or getting any kind of behind the scenes images. And it works, and I think it's a good idea. And I have to say, I didn't miss my phone because you're in such a unique environment that you probably won't be in again, that it's just a brilliant thing to just kind of absorb. So I'm glad they do take the phones away. It makes it much more enjoyable, and also means that all your friends at home who know you're going have to sit and watch the whole programme to try and spot you, even if they can't, which in our case they couldn't at all, which is quite funny. But anyway, I digress. So once you're through security, you're in this little holding area, which is an outdoor area outside the stage. There's toilets, and then there's a big marquee, which inside has a bar, food, a photo booth, lots of chairs, and everyone's just kind of mingling. And I thought that this would be a really separate area from the pros, from the celebs, from everyone on the show. I thought we'd be really separate, but you weren't. Jamie Borthwick, one of the contestants this year, was just kind of chilling with his family and friends in the marquee. Some of the professional dancers, Nikita and Kai and Lauren as well, they were all kind of talking to their friends and family right at the gate, coming over the gate and talking to people. It was really relaxed, and I guess, as I said, the no phones thing, I think because no one's going to be asking for a photo, no one's going to be harassing you because they're in that situation, I guess it's a lot more relaxed, and it really took me by surprise to how chilled and how calm it was, and just how relaxed it was between the public and the people involved in the show. But again, you've gone through security, so hopefully you haven't got anything dodgy on you, and it was just a really lovely atmosphere. Toya Wilcox was eating a biscuit, sat on a little kind of concrete block outside. She looked quite nervous, and I'm not surprised after seeing her dance, but yes, it was a really lovely atmosphere and a really enjoyable place to be before you enter the studio. So you get called up in different groups, so you get different coloured things. Lots of people have wristbands on, stripy ones, a pink one. We had little green stickers that we had to take in, and this was just to differentiate between the different groups. The majority of the people that you see in the audience at Strictly on those lower levels of the auditorium are family and friends. I don't think I really realised how many of them were that until you're there, but the majority are them, and we kind of just fill around. So we were kind of the third or fourth group to enter into the auditorium, and when they open those doors, you basically just go backstage, so you see all the set, all the costumes, the crew, everything. There's no hiding away, there's no kind of pretending it's all glitz and glamour. It's like a backstage at a theatre. It's like backstage at a show, and I loved seeing all that before we got to our seats. But it's just an absolutely bizarre experience to go through those doors, and then we were up on the balcony, if you're looking at the Strictly, at the stairs at the back, we were on the left-hand side, on Claudia's side, that's what they called it, of the auditorium. And you go in and you sit down, and you're just like blown away by the fact you're in the Strictly auditorium, you're in the Strictly studio, and I've watched this on TV for so many years, and now you're actually in it. It is so surreal and so bizarre, but so exciting at the same time. you can't select where you sit, you get sat where you get sat. And because of that, sometimes the view might not be brilliant. Luckily for us, where we were on the balcony, we could see the whole dance floor. We couldn't see the judges because they were underneath us, but we could see Tess and Claudia. We could look over to our right and see all the pros and the celebs in Claudia's little auditorium, the Clauditorium. And you could see Claudia as well. We had a brilliant view. You could see the staircase. We didn't really miss anything. However, even though it was a free event, which thousands of people enter every year, and you're so lucky to get a ticket, people were still complaining near us, and it drove me mad. It pisses me off. It happened to me when I went to see Michael McIntyre's big show at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. People complained they couldn't see, couldn't do this, and it's free. It's free, and it pisses me off, frankly. Excuse the swearing, but it does. And I just can't deal with it. We had this woman next to us who, hopefully she's not listening to this, but I don't really care. She was complaining that she was too short to see the dancers. Then she couldn't see because she had to wear her glasses or something. And then they had to kneel on the... No one else was having this issue, by the way. No one else on their section, they were kind of opposite from us, had this issue. And then other people on our row, when she started kicking off, then started to go, well, we can't see either. And it was just like, where have people got the audacity to have this sort of entitled behaviour at a free event? You ain't paid for anything. You have not paid for a single thing, apart from maybe a hotel to stay there overnight. But apart from that, you've not paid for a ticket or anything. This is a free, brilliant experience, and you still find time to complain. Oh my god, but luckily this woman got moved. Well, she didn't move. They had to fill in some of the balcony on the opposite side to us, so they asked if people wanted to move, and they did move. And then she went round the other side, and the whole of our row were just laughing because over there she kept on moving, and then she was complaining to the ushers over there that she couldn't see, and she was just being an absolute dick, and it really, really frustrated me. And then she was with someone, I don't know what relation they were to each other, but they were sat together on our side. But over on the other balcony, she separated from her and sat somewhere completely different, because clearly she just wanted a better seat and didn't care who she was sat with. It was all very bizarre, and then she had a face like a slapped arse for the whole of the episode. So I have no idea if she had a good time or not. But I hate people like that in these situations, and I wish people would just shut up sometimes, because it just made everything just like, what? Just don't be a fun sponge and don't be a dick is the moral of this story. So once you sat down, you had about 50 minutes before the recording actually started, until we went live on BBC One. And they had a warm-up person who came on and kind of got everyone going, told everyone what was going to go on, when we were going to cheer, and this, that, and the other. And then Claudia and Tess came on and said hello to people, and we practiced the beginning of the show, because the dance at the beginning of the show is pre-recorded, so we have to watch it on the screen at the back and then clap and kind of whoop and react to Claudia's comments about it as if we've just watched it, which was slightly weird. Then we pre-recorded a section when Dave Arch, the conductor of the orchestra for Strictly, he gets introduced by Tess. And I thought this would happen live every single time it happens. But they pre-record it every show. They pre-record it before they go live. I have no idea why. I don't know if it's because he's prepping to play music for the next piece or whatever it might be. But they pre-record his little wave to the camera, which I thought was a really interesting little insight into how they do certain bits of the programme. So then, after waiting around a bit, we went live at 7 o'clock on BBC One, and it was just a thrilling 2.5 hours. It was long, it was really long, and my bum got very numb, but it was very interesting to see everything happen live in front of you and all the bits that you don't see on the cameras. So where we were sat at the back of the balcony, if you leant over, you could see the whole corridor behind the set, where after the dancers had been and got their scores from Claudia, they went down and were greeted by the crew who hugged them, gave them water, gave them towels. You saw all the dancers and the presenters coming in before the recording started, so you got a bit of an insight into the backstage life at Strictly as well, which for a nosy person like me was really interesting. And also what I loved was seeing all the bits in between the numbers when they changed the set, because obviously they don't show that on the telly, but as soon as a couple has danced and has gone up to Claudia to get their kind of feedback and have a chat, there are about, I don't know how many, but there was loads of crew just flooding the stage. They clear all the sets, sweep up all the petals or confetti, wipe up any spillages, and then the new set goes on, and then in some cases they had to put pyros down or fly things in, and it's so quick, and it's just to the second that they get it right, and then the VT starts for the next couple. They walk on, everyone gives a little round of applause, and you're back again. And it's so quick, especially this week when you've got, I think it was 15 couples, because it's the first week, and also no one goes home, so there's just quite a lot to it. But it was just really interesting to see all of that, and also Tess Daly, when she does her little links between each couple, she often does it without her heels on. She took her heels off a couple of times to go upstairs and then just didn't put them back on, which I loved seeing that side of things as well. It was just a really interesting experience, and one that you never really appreciate how much work goes into a program like this until you see it from behind the scenes and see how many people are involved in making it work and making it happen. And it was just a really exciting thing to be able to witness. My favourite dances, which I might do every week actually on the podcast, because Strictly is theatre related and I might talk about it on here every week. Let's do that. But this week, I think my favourite dances were Sarah and Vito. I loved them as a couple and I loved their dance. She's very good. She is musical theatre trained, so that probably helps, which is, I'm not complaining about it, but she was very good. I really liked her. I liked Tasha and Aliash. I thought she was very good. But often when someone's really, really good from the beginning, it wears off by about week 5. A bit like Danny Mac and all those people. They were brilliant and I loved them, but the excitement of them getting better doesn't really work because they're already very good. I thought Chris McCausland and Diane as a couple were phenomenal. I mean, he's blind, and he danced better than some of the people who could see, which I think it was just brilliant. And I praise Diane for managing to get that partnership to work so well, and I think it's gonna last a long time. I think the public will get behind them very much so. And I just thought it was a really, really good night. Obviously, Toya and her flicky hair was interesting. I thought she was going to be amazing. I really did, because she's a pop star and she did some musical theatre. I thought she'd have it in her, but clearly not. Well, not yet anyway. She might get better. And also Paul Merson, who wasn't that bad but wasn't brilliant, and same with Nick Knowles, but he was also a lot better than I thought he was going to be. So all in all, the standard is really high, and I got to see it in person, which was just so exciting. At the end of the recording, if it's a result show day, they have a 15-minute gap after you've finished, and then they pre-record the results show. But obviously, because it's the first week, no one goes home, so we didn't have to stay too late. As soon as the show finished, you basically do another round of applause to all the couples, and then you leave. You just go. You just walk out. We walked out behind Fleur East, who is a presenter on It Takes Two and former contestant, and then we got our phones, and then we left, went to Tesco, got food, went back to our hotel room, and slept. It was quite a long day, and it was quite a long time to stay very perky and active, because any moment you could be on camera, and so you had to smile quite a lot. But it was a fantastic experience, and one that I know my nan would have been extremely jealous of, but also would have loved hearing all about it. So I'm glad I went, because I think she would have been very happy that I'd gone. But we had a fantastic time. So if you do ever win tickets in the Strictly ballot, do go, because it is so worth it. So the following day, I went to see Starlight Express with my auntie. This was my birthday present for my 21st a couple of months ago. And I don't know a lot about Starlight Express. Well, I didn't going into it. I knew a few songs. I obviously knew it was on roller skates and it was about trains. And I knew the odd thing about it and the general gist of the storyline. However, I didn't know enough to be not excited, but I didn't know enough to be like, oh, there's this song, oh, there's this number. I just went in kind of a bit blind and wasn't quite sure what to expect. Obviously, Starlight as a show has a very cult following and was huge in the 80s and the 90s. It was a massive, mega hit for Andrew Lloyd Webber, and he did so well, and it was kind of this huge thing that took over the West End, not so much on Broadway, but definitely here in the UK and also in Germany. Germany have got a purpose-built Starlight Express theatre where the show has been running for decades now. And it's just this huge phenomenon, so it's brilliant that it's come back to London in this brand new modernised production. So, as I said, I didn't know anything about it, but I know that they've rewritten quite a lot of the show, changed the characters, added songs, cut songs, all of that, which I guess every show needs every once in a while, especially with Starlight, which has had so many iterations over the years. In the mid-90s or early 90s, they did a whole kind of rewrite of the West End production. They shut it for a bit and reopened it, and they'd cut characters, changed songs, they'd done all that already. So it's not a surprise that the show has had another change and kind of a fresh lick of paint. So the theatre, the Troubadour Wembley Park, is where Newsies was last year or the year before, and it's a funny old venue. It used to be a TV studio. I think X Factor and things like that were filmed there. And so it's just a big kind of industrial space, and I don't particularly love it as a venue. It's a bit ugly, I can't lie, and because it's just a big old industrial unit, it doesn't really feel like a theatre, and I kind of wish it did more, although they've done a lot to the foyer for this. For Newsies, it was just bland inside, but the foyer for Starlight is brilliant. They've got music pumping, must be about 50 or 60 disco balls kind of hanging everywhere. They've got wonderful kind of light arches as you come through the door and throughout. They've done a lot more to it, and it makes you really excited to go and see this show. I have to say, the programme was extremely expensive. £15. £15 was not coming out of my pocket. I refused to pay it, and as did my auntie. And I just think programmes should not be that much. They should be maximum £10, no more, because £15 is ridiculous. But anyway, as you walk in to the space, it is quite a mind-blowing thing to see, because the tracks and the audience are so intertwined. There's so many different segments, and it's just a really exciting set to walk into and think, I'm just about to see a show in this space. We were at the front of the back section of seating, so we were only about 3 or 4 rows from the big kind of skating area. And sitting there, I wanted to sit there because you could then see the whole stage, and that does make a lot of difference with this show, because I think if you sat in the front section where they're whizzing round you, you'd lose half the show because you're constantly moving your neck all the time. I'd get neck ache. But it's a really stunning set, really, and I think it's lit extremely well, and it's really kind of techno and a bit neon, and it's just exciting. It gets you so excited to go and see this show that, again, I didn't really know anything about. You do get shut in your sections because of the use of the rink, as it were. You do get shut in, so you can't leave, you can't go for a wee, really, and you can't go and just kind of go out in the middle of the show. A couple of people had to because someone had a panic attack and another child really needed a wee, but they have to go out at such specific times because the entrance that you use to get into the auditorium is also an exit for the cast throughout the show when they're on their roller skates, so they have to be really careful about letting people in and out, so you do get kind of penned in to where you are, but we were in a big section, so it wasn't too bad. But if I was in one of those smaller sections, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much, knowing that I basically could never leave my seat because they're always skating round you. The show itself is really, really bizarre. It's so bloody weird, and I didn't realise how weird it was until I watched it, and I was like, this is weirder than Cats. Cats, I can understand why it works, because animals and felines do have relationships, they do fall in love with each other, they do have enemies, this, that and the other. But trains don't do that, ever. Unless it's Thomas the Tank Engine or Chuggington, that doesn't happen. And I just thought it was a really, really bizarre concept and idea for a musical. Does it work? Kind of, but is it really weird? Yes. And still can't get my head around it, and I do think it's one of the weirdest shows I think I will ever see. I think anyone has ever written. I think if anyone wrote Starlight Express now, they'd be laughed at, because I don't think it's a particularly well-written show, particularly. I don't think the music is Andrew Lloyd Webber's best work. There are some catchy tunes in there. God, it does get stuck in your head. But I don't think as a collective it's the best music ever. But it's enjoyable, and it is enjoyable as a show, even if it is really weird. Visually, it is just spectacular, and the show itself is just a spectacle. You don't go for the songs, you don't go for the storyline, you go for the spectacle, and they have done it so well. The costumes, the lighting was exquisite. There was some beautiful moments with the lighting. I don't want to spoil it too much, but in Starlight Express, when they actually finally sing the whole song, which takes quite a while to get there, they sing it a little bit here and there, and then you finally get it in Act 2. But these hundreds of tiny little kind of stars ascend from the ceiling. They do move down towards you over the whole auditorium, and it is beautiful, and it just is a lovely moment, and just the usage of the lighting throughout was such a standout for me. And also the use of cameras. So when they do the races, they have people with cameras kind of following the racers around the track and filming when they crash and this, that and the other, which I also quite liked. It felt a bit like Robot Wars or something like that. There was just some really clever elements to it that I really enjoyed, and I was thoroughly entertained for the whole 2.5 hours. It was really enjoyable. It was a bit of a Sunday audience. They weren't really getting involved. They weren't really clapping. They weren't cheering on in the races. I would have done that more if I had more of an audience around me, but I didn't really have anyone around me who was doing it. So I felt a bit awkward doing it. But it's just fun for all the family. Kids will enjoy it. Adults will enjoy it. Grandparents will enjoy it. Great-grandparents might enjoy it. It is just a fun, entertaining evening/afternoon at the theatre, and I would recommend it to everyone, I think. And I genuinely went into this thinking I'm not going to enjoy this show, because it's really not my cup of tea. I don't often like a lot of Andrew Lloyd Webber's work, but this was just fun. It was fun, and that is sometimes all you need. So if you get a chance, go and see Starlight. It's currently booking until the middle of next year, I think June next year, so you've got quite a while to go. But I'd go and see it as soon as you can, because it's just, I can't say it anymore, but it's just fun. It's fun. And I love that they don't shy away from the fact that they are just having a brilliant time. It's great. Also, a quick add-on that the performers are just another level. The fact they have to skate as well as sing, dance and act all at the same time, and sometimes do that 2 times a day, they must be absolutely shattered. So hats off to them. I think they're probably some of the hardest working people in London theatre right now. So I actually started to record this section of the podcast the other day when I was talking about Strictly and Starlight, but as I got into the news, I checked my phone and they'd announced the new season at the National, they'd announced this and that, and I thought I need to wait and get all this news into the podcast. So this is actually me on a different day if you're listening, but how exciting is that? But let's kick off talking about these new productions at the National for the final season of the artistic director Rufus Norris. So the first production is Lynette Linton directing Arinze Kenny and Sherelle Skeet in Michael Abonset's comedy Alterations. You also have Daniel Raggett directing Shan Sahota's brand new play The Estate, which will be led by Adil Akhtar. And then you have Juliet Stevenson, who will star in the new play The Land of the Living, directed by Stephen Daldry. That's next September, so quite a long way to wait until we get that. And a brand new play called Inter Alia will star Rosamund Pike. You also have the return of a musical, London Road, which previously played at the National, and this will have a new run from the 5th to the 21st of June, and then also the return of Nye, the play about the NHS, which I was lucky enough to see this year, which I really enjoyed, once again starring Michael Sheen from the 3rd to the 16th of July, and also the return of Dear England as well. But the biggest news for me personally and for musical theatre fans will be the news that Stephen Sondheim's final musical, Here We Are, will transfer its off-Broadway production to the National Theatre from the 23rd of April to the 28th of June. And this is such brilliant news that we are getting this musical. It had very good reviews when it was off Broadway at the Shed last year, and two of those original castmates are confirmed to be joining this National Theatre transfer, and they are Tracy Bennett and Dennis O'Hare, two brilliant actors, and they will also be joined by Rory Kinnear in the show as well. Other casting will be announced in due course, I am sure, but to get this final Sondheim musical is such a big thing, and I'm glad it's going to the National because I think they will do very well. I think it will sell very well and people will love it, and the UK has always had a deep love for everything Sondheim, and especially Julia Mackenzie helped really grow the UK's love for Sondheim with Follies and Into the Woods and just brilliant shows over the years. And we do have, I think, a special touch with Sondheim. We do revivals of his work really, really well. Things like the recent Merrily We Roll Along revival. That originated here in the UK. That's not a revival that originated in the States. And I'm just glad that we're finally getting the chance to see this musical, and I've heard rumours about who might be going in it as well as the casting that I just said, and they sound pretty good, so I'm excited to see what that's like. I don't know anything about it, I've yet to even listen to it, and I'm a big Sondheim fan, but I struggle sometimes to listen to his work when I don't know the exact plot, because sometimes it is quite complicated, especially with something new. But that is, for me, the most exciting part of that new season at the National. But it's such a good season with some brilliant casting and some brilliant directors and writers and returns of beloved National Theatre productions too. So tickets go on sale kind of sporadically over the next few months, but if you can, make sure you grab a ticket to see your favourites. Let's move away from the National and talk about some more upcoming productions. Let's kick off with Come Fall in Love. So this is a new musical adaptation set in the UK of one of the biggest films in Indian cinema history. It's actually the longest running title in Indian cinema history, and it's going to premiere from the 29th of May to the 21st of June next year at the Manchester Opera House. Asa Butterfield, best known for his work on sex education, will star in a one-man play called Second Best at the Riverside Studios in January and February next year. So it's going to be directed by Michael Longhurst, and it tells the fictional story of a now man but who was a child who missed out on playing the titular character in the Harry Potter film series. It's apparently meant to tug at your heartstrings but also be hilarious at the same time. This sounds really interesting, and the Riverside Studios, I've never been there, but it's meant to be a very lovely venue. And talking of Riverside Studios, the Dolly Parton musical, which is currently touring the UK, called Here You Come Again, will run at the Riverside Studios this Christmas from the 10th of December to the 18th of January before continuing its UK tour around the country. But that will be running at the Riverside Studios as well, so pretty good time for the Riverside Studios. We mentioned about the new season at the National, but the Almeida Theatre has also announced its new season as well, and it's going to star the likes of Michael Shannon, Ruth Wilson, Daisy Edgar-Jones and Kingsley Ben-Adir, and it's going to open with a brand new production of the Tennessee Williams classic Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, directed by Rebecca Frecknell. So this will run from the 10th of December to the 1st of February this year, so it's coming up fairly soon, and that is going to star Daisy Edgar-Jones and Kingsley Ben-Adir. If it's anything like that production of A Streetcar Named Desire, which did incredibly well, also directed by Rebecca Frecknell, I imagine this will probably have a further life in the West End at some point, but if you want to catch its initial run, those are the dates that you need to go and see it. Another 2 dates have been added to the UK tour of Moulin Rouge, the first at the Manchester Palace Theatre from the 20th of August to the 4th of October, and then from the 15th of October to the 15th of November, it will be running at the Birmingham Hippodrome. So another couple of dates for that tour, which they're drip feeding here, there and everywhere, but gradually it's filling out a bit. Now, benefit concerts are a really great way of raising money for charity, but also celebrating people at the same time. And this has happened a few times over the last few years, but a brand new one has been announced for later this year, and it's going to be called A Marvellous Party, and it's going to celebrate 125 years of Noel Coward, and they have announced their all-star cast for this charity gala. It's going to be directed by Daniel Evans, and it's going to star the likes of Hugh Bonneville, Giles Brandreth, Dame Judi Dench, Lindsay Duncan, Cush Jumbo, Robert Lindsay, Damian Lewis, Hilton McRae, and Giles Torreira. What a brilliant mix of people. I might have to go along and see this. I was part of the 125th birthday celebrations when I worked on the musical adaptation of Blythe Spirit, High Spirits, when I was at uni. That was under the banner of the 125th anniversary, and we worked with the Noel Coward Society with that, so I have been a small part of that, and hopefully they'll do a number or two from that show in it. But that will be on Sunday the 17th of November at the Prince of Wales Theatre. Now, this could be a new production. We don't quite know. This is a bit of a rumour, a bit unclear, not officially confirmed. But could Shucked, the Broadway musical, be heading to the West End? Now, about a year and a bit ago, the socials on the Shucked musical Twitter or X and Facebook and everything put out a thing saying that it was going to open in 2024. Obviously, this has not happened and we never heard anything else. But now the show's director has said in a recent interview with Broadway Direct that he is going to London to cast the British version of Shucked, which will be done next summer in Regent's Park. So Jack O'Brien, who's the director of the show, has seemingly confirmed that it's going to be playing Regent's Park next summer, but obviously we won't get an official announcement until the season at Regent's Park is announced, and that won't be for a good few months, I don't imagine. But that is a little tidbit that I thought I would include this week, because I'm quite excited to see what that show's all about. A section I never really like doing is the section talking about shows that are closing, but this one is a really interesting and really bizarre and sad turn of events. So Cake the Musical was about to get its first proper full-length run after a few concert productions, and it's going to close after just 2 weeks running at the Other Palace. At time of recording it's currently on, but it was meant to run till the 10th of November, and it's shutting much, much earlier. So this musical is based around the life of Marie Antoinette, and it stars ZZ Strallen. And they put out this statement, and this is what it says. Sadly, Cake, the Marie Antoinette playlist, will conclude its run of performances at the Other Palace on Sunday the 29th of September. Despite strong initial interest in this exciting new musical, it is not viable for the production to continue beyond this point and complete its planned run. We would like to thank all of the cast, creative team, technical staff, and all of those who have helped to develop this new musical to this point. All of the team involved have worked incredibly hard to create an excellent show, which we are all incredibly proud of. Customers for cancelled performances will be contacted by the box office or ticket agents shortly, and we will be cancelling our planned press performance on the 24th of September. Now, this is a difficult one because it's great that new musicals are opening and it's great that there seems to be a hunger for them, but when they're not selling, they can't keep open, and everyone always goes on about the fact that we must have new musicals, everyone must support them, this, that and the other. But clearly that isn't the case, that everyone is necessarily supporting those shows, because if they were, and if everyone was getting behind these shows, then we would be not cancelling a show after just 2 weeks of a run without a press night, which is awful for everyone involved. After weeks of rehearsals and all the build-up and having a contract cut short by over a month and a few weeks, it's crazy. So I send my love to everyone involved in that show, because it's not fun. No one wants to close a show early. But when in the statement they're saying that due to the fact that basically the initial interest for the musical has kind of petered off, that's just a bit shit, isn't it? So make sure, if you want to support new musicals, you do go and see them, because this is what happens when no one necessarily does go and doesn't book, and these shows have to end up closing early, which is not what anyone wants. You know I like to keep you updated on the ongoing kind of happenings with theatres up and down the country, whether that's kind of renovations or closures or stories just about them, and we have a few this week. So the big one is the Beck Theatre in Hayes, and this is under threat of closure. So there's been behind the scenes drama between Hillingdon Council and the theatre operator Trafalgar, and Trafalgar have said that they will stop management from the 13th of January 2025. So the contract was up earlier this year with Trafalgar, but Trafalgar have stated that the contract was extended by 2 years in late 2021 to allow the council to look into plans to possibly develop the site and not use it as a theatre anymore. There has kind of been a bit of back and forth with the quotes over the last kind of week or so, and What's on Stage did a brilliant article kind of conglomerating all of that. So this quote from the council said that Trafalgar currently pays no rent for the use of the theatre and has very limited repair liability, the cost of which has been borne by Hillingdon residents. In addition, the council has been paying a subsidy towards the theatre's operations. This money from the council has been used to kind of enable the Beck to get involved with the local community and participate in events and the Hillingdon Music Service and with schools and dance schools and all that. Trafalgar continued that our creative learning work has touched the lives of thousands of local people and includes, amongst many other initiatives, community choirs, workshops, dementia-friendly film screenings and youth projects. So after this, Trafalgar agreed to trial an arrangement where they would run the building with no financial support from the council. At the end of July, they gave the council a deadline of the 13th of September to see whether they wanted to do this, but they didn't respond in time. Due to this, Trafalgar are now exiting the running of the theatre, but a new campaign entitled Back the Beck has been set up by local campaigners to save the venue and make sure that it doesn't close and the site isn't redeveloped. It's important, as I always say, that theatres are kept open. They are so important to the local community, and Trafalgar are clearly proving that point with what they've done with the venue and how often local groups and communities have been using it. So if you are passionate about this, get behind the campaign, Back the Beck. You can Google it, go on Facebook, go wherever, and see how you can get involved. Now, you may remember a few weeks back that I was talking about the Churchill Theatre in Bromley. Now, if you don't remember that or you didn't listen to that, the theatre was put up for sale and the future of it was very unsure and it was very unclear what was going to happen. But now the future seems quite sorted. An offer has been accepted after extensive discussions and a deal is very close to being secured for the freehold, and it's been discussed with the runners of the theatre as well, also Trafalgar. So hopefully that theatre is in a good place now and it's all going to be okay, but I will keep you updated if there is any more news. A few other bits of news from the past week, and this is before we go into the many bits of casting news from the last week. But we start off with the sad news that the actor Cleo Sylvester has died at the age of 79, and she was the first black woman to play a leading role at the National Theatre, and she had a huge stage and screen career in many things, and I imagine that everyone of every generation will have seen her in either a show or on screen in a film or a TV series. She did so much. And also, we lost Adrian Bailey, the Broadway actor, at the age of 67. So his Broadway career was extensive. He appeared in My One and Only, Jelly's Last Jam, Tommy, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Smokey Joe's Cafe, La Cage, The Wild Party, lots and lots of original casts and big Broadway productions, and he made his final appearance in 2008 in the ensemble of The Little Mermaid. One performance, he was injured after falling 20 feet through a trapdoor prior to the start of a performance, and this caused him to suffer 2 fractured wrists, a broken back, a shattered pelvis, a fractured sternum, several fractured ribs, and a fractured foot. This basically stopped his career. This stopped him from performing. He had to relearn how to walk. It was horrific. He actually surpassed the expectations of how long he would survive after this fall. So 2 wonderful Broadway and West End actors that we've lost in the past week. Also, a couple of bits of TV and film news. The first is that the Tony Awards will return to Radio City Music Hall for the broadcast in 2025 on the 8th of June. So the Tony Awards wasn't at the Radio City this last year, but I'm so glad they're returning. Maybe it's because they know that Audra's going to win a Tony for Gypsy, so, you know, they've got to make sure she's on that Radio City stage again. That's my theory anyway. Probably not true at all, but I can be hopeful. But yes, they are returning to Radio City, but please broadcast them in the UK, especially this year, because I think it's going to be one of the closest and most difficult to call Tony Awards in a very long time. I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating. So I'm going to have to find a way to watch it, because I'm going to have to stay up and see who takes home those Tonys, because I won't be able to sleep. And also, there has finally been an update on the remake of Guys and Dolls. So this remake of the film has been in the running for a very long time, over a decade now at least. And in 2021, Bill Condon, who was behind Dreamgirls and Beauty and the Beast, was set to direct it, that he was announced to be directing this new adaptation of Guys and Dolls for the big screen. But now he has left the project, and it's been announced that Rob Marshall, the man behind the Little Mermaid remake and also Into the Woods and of course Chicago, is going to direct this brand new version of Guys and Dolls with a new screenplay for Sony. So I cannot wait for this, because I don't particularly like the original film of Guys and Dolls. The casting was iffy. Marlon Brando was iffy casting. They put that dreadful song in for Adelaide where she sings about being a cat instead of Take Back Your Mink. I think that's what they changed. And it's not my favourite film, and I find it quite boring. So to get a brand new glitzy adaptation directed by Rob Marshall, who is arguably the king of movie musicals, is a brilliant move. So hopefully we'll find out more about that in the coming months and see who possibly might be playing the parts. And let's talk briefly about an issue I spoke about last week at the Royal Exchange in Manchester. So I said I would keep you up to date if I heard any news. So this was about a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream that was cancelled very abruptly, and it was all a bit confusing as to why that had happened. But now it's been confirmed that this was cancelled over rows over references to Palestine and trans rights. So it was not allowed to go ahead until the phrases trans rights and free Palestine were removed from the production. The people higher up at the Royal Exchange were not happy with their inclusion, but they were challenged obviously by the director and the company. Apparently it had been seen by many people during rehearsals and with the recordings that they did of the show, but it wasn't addressed until the day before the dress run, which is baffling to me why, if they had an issue with it at all, it wasn't brought up earlier. It seems like it was a very last minute decision to have an issue with this inclusion. So the theatre did concede to include trans rights, but were categorically forbidden to say Free Palestine in the production. So this meant that the director stepped away from it, and due to lack of support and the lack of management really. And this whole thing does bring up the conversation with regards to censorship in theatre, and should a company like the Royal Exchange be able to say to the director and company of a show, you cannot say these phrases or these words because we don't want you to say them? Should that be allowed? I don't know. I don't particularly think so, because the arts has always been such a brilliant place for putting out your viewpoint and your opinions and your political beliefs and sharing those with people who may or may not agree with them. And that is the joy of theatre, is that not everyone's going to agree with necessarily the context of the show or the text in the play. And that's kind of the whole point of the arts, is to make sure that you're pushing the boundaries and including things that might, for some people, might be deemed controversial, but for others might not be at all. And to just say you are not allowed to use this is a really hard line to take, and a really controversial one. I think it calls for a wider discussion about if this should be allowed, and how it got to the point where it was right up until the dress run that this was mentioned and not prior, after weeks and weeks of rehearsal, because it just seems like they were fine with it until it got to a point where they went, oh, we don't want this anymore, which again isn't okay. So hopefully there will be more discussion about this, and hopefully more will be out in the press about this situation, and I will of course keep you updated. Now let's move on to the final section, talking about casting, and there's been quite a lot. So Les Mis has announced its new West End cast, including the likes of Ian McIntosh, Robson Broad, and also my friend Jacob Datchler, who is taking on the role of Marius. Also joining him in the cast that I know are Daniel J. Bryan and Aaron Jade Morgan, as well as Ben Oatley, who is currently in the West End cast and is carrying on for another year. So big congratulations to all my wonderful friends who are in Les Mis. It's very exciting saying I know people in things. I always love it because it's just cool. And also the full cast has been announced for Fly More Than You Fall, starring Kiala Settle, and also two of my friends are in that, Kieran and Zasha. Big congratulations to them. And also my friend Jess is working on the stage management team for that as well. So all very exciting for lots of people that I know, and I always love that. Of course, the big theatre news on Broadway this last week was the casting for the Gypsy revival. So Danny Burstein, Tony winner, will be playing Herbie opposite Audra in the revival. So he won his Tony for Moulin Rouge, but he was nominated for 6 other Tony Awards across his career for the likes of Follies, South Pacific, Golden Boy, a brilliant career he has had. So he is the most Tony-nominated actor in the Best Supporting Actor in a Musical category, and funnily enough, the character of Herbie is the most nominated character in that category too, with 4 nominations, with one of those being a win for Boyd Gaines in the most recent Broadway revival of Gypsy back in 2008. So I'm really happy for Danny, and I think he is perfect casting for this role. If you'd asked me about 3 years ago who I would like to see in a revival of Gypsy, with Audra as Mama Rose, because I've always wanted her, I probably would have said Danny Burstein, so it's just brilliant casting. As well as that is the news that Joy Woods will star as Louise and Jordan Tyson as June. So this casting has not been a very well kept secret, and it's been rumoured for months and months that Joy Woods will be starring as Louise, and she's had to deny the rumours, and it's got quite aggressive online. People have kind of been harassing her about it, but now it's out there in the open, and I think it's brilliant casting. If you don't know, her and Jordan have both been in The Notebook on Broadway, and you might have seen the audio of the song My Days from The Notebook doing the rounds on TikTok, and Joy Woods is the singer of that, and I think she's marvellous, and I hope it pushes her into further stardom and possibly wins her a Tony, just like it did for Laura Benanti back in 2008, the only actress to win a Tony for playing the role of Louise. Also joining the show are Leslie Margarita as Tessitura, Lily Thomas as Mazeppa, and Mylinda Hull as Electra. So we basically have everyone now apart from Papa and also Tulsa as well, but I imagine we'll get those in the next week or so. But a brilliant cast full of award-winning actors, and it just proves that they are doing this revival right, and I cannot wait to see how it goes. The UK tour of Mary Poppins has also announced its cast. Stephanie Jones and Jack Chambers will lead the company as Mary and Bert, but you also have Michael Xavier as George Banks and Lucia May Summer as Winifred Banks. You've got Rosemary Ashe, and you've got Wendy Ferguson, Sonia Swaby, who's making her grand return to musical theatre. A brilliant cast full of wonderful performers, both old and new, and I'm excited to see Mary Poppins back on tour in the UK. Heading back over to the States is the new casting for the off-Broadway run of Little Shop of Horrors. So this has been going for nearly 5 years now. It's crazy how well this revival has done. But they've announced a new casting for Audrey and Seymour, and you've got Nicholas Christopher as Seymour, great casting, but then you have Sherry Renee Scott as Audrey. Now, I love this woman. She is a brilliant musical theatre performer. Her last major musical in New York was in 2011 when she starred in Woman on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. She starred in Aida. She starred in The Last 5 Years off Broadway as well. She starred as Ursula in the original production of The Little Mermaid. She is a brilliant actress, and I'm so glad she's returning to the stage after such a long time, and I think she's going to make a brilliant Audrey. The casting for the 2 special performances on the 16th and 17th of November of the new musical Mozart, Her Story, about Mozart's sister, has been announced. So you've got Gabrielle Brooks, Tyrone Huntley, Anthony Rapp and Laura Pitt-Pulford amongst that cast. Again, a really strong group of people. They seem to be getting such great performers and personalities for these kind of one-off concerts, and I just think it's great casting, and I think it entices people to go and see the show, and that's always good, because as I said, you need to support new musicals and to make sure that theatre keeps going, so make sure, if you can, to grab a ticket. Tony Award winner for Paradise Square, Joaquina Calacango, is going to replace Joy Woods in Ragtime at New York City Centre as now Joy Woods has a bit of a scheduling conflict. So this is the run later this year, which really does clash with the opening of Gypsy. So now Joy is out and we have a wonderful Tony winner replacing her. So yes, another bit of casting news for another concert production. Brie Larson has been announced as the lead casting for a new show called Electra, which will run at the Duke of York's Theatre in London for 11 weeks only, from the 24th of January to the 12th of April, but prior to that, it's having its preview period at the Theatre Royal Brighton, which is very rogue, from the 13th to the 18th of January. They did this recently with another play, and I can't remember for the life of me what it was, but it's clearly a new thing that they've got that seems to work for them. It's cheaper to do a week of previews outside of London, so why not do it in Brighton? But yes, Brie Larson is making her West End debut, and I imagine her Brighton debut as well. The likes of Matthew Horn and Mason Alexander Park from Cabaret will join Sigourney Weaver in The Tempest at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane from the 7th of December, and also Vinnie Jones, the footballer and Hollywood actor, will star in the musical Only Fools and Horses in his musical theatre debut for 3 weeks only at the Eventim Apollo from the 17th of December. And also, Sheffield Theatres have announced the lead casting for their new Christmas production of Little Shop of Horrors, and it's going to be led by Colin Ryan, Sam Buttery and Georgina Onura. And again, really excited for this. And unfortunately, I won't be able to make it up to Sheffield because I live quite far away. But I do want to go and visit there one day because they do such wonderful things at the Crucible and such brilliant productions. But it's just that bit too far for me to go up there. But maybe one day I'll be able to go and visit. So this week's Fin to the Woods fun fact, well, vaguely fun fact, comes, of course, from the world of Strictly It Has To this week. And you might have thought that Tess Daly, the presenter of the programme, has presented every single series, but she has not. For half of Series 2, the winner of the first series, Natasha Kaplinsky, was the presenter alongside Sir Bruce Forsyth, because Tess Daly was having a baby. Oh, that was a lot in that episode. We spoke about Strictly, Starlight, and also all the theatre news and a lot of casting news as well. A pretty jam-packed episode, but I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It does help get the podcast out there to more listeners, and I do really appreciate it if you can do that. And if you enjoy what I do on my podcast, make sure to follow me on Instagram and also on my TikTok at Fin to the Woods. But yes, I will speak to you once again slightly later next week, so I'm going away on a holiday, but I will speak to you once again next week with all the goings on from around the theatre industry.